I showed up at my parents' 40th anniversary dinner, thinking it would finally be a night where I felt like part of the family, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The second I reached for the lobster platter in the middle of the table, my aunt snapped at me. Her lips curled into this fake smile, but her voice was pure venom. "Don't touch the lobster. That's for the real family." For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard her. But then my cousin Jake, Mr. Eternal Frat Boy himself, leaned back in his chair with that smirk I've hated since we were kids. He lifted his glass like he was in some cheesy commercial and sneered, "Yeah, $5,000 dinners aren't for freeloaders." I just froze. My hand hovered over the silver tongs, and heat crawled up my neck. I looked around the table, hoping someone, anyone, would back me up. My sister Amy, the same sister I'd covered 3 months of mortgage payments for, stared at her scallops like they'd suddenly become fascinating. Uncle Frank, who'd begged me for a loan just last month, was chuckling into his plate. And my parents? Sitting at the head of the table, pretending not to notice. They didn't defend me. They didn't say a word. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Like I was an intruder at a celebration I had paid for. A private dining room at one of the best waterfront restaurants in the city, crystal glasses, white-gloved servers, a view so perfect it looked painted. I dropped $5,000 just to give them this night, and here I was, being treated like a stranger. Something inside me snapped. I let out this short, bitter laugh that made the whole table pause. Then, without breaking eye contact with Jake, I calmly reached down, grabbed the biggest chunk of lobster, dunked it in the butter, and took a slow, deliberate bite. I chewed slowly, almost theatrically, while their stares burned into me. Then I set the napkin back on the table, pushed my chair back, and walked out. The whispers followed me down the marble steps and into the warm night air. I slid into my car, gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding. But instead of anger, a cold, steady calm washed over me. If they wanted to draw lines, then fine, I'd make those lines permanent. Before I even pulled out of the lot, I was on the phone with my bank. That $5,000 dinner? Reversed. Gone. Let them figure out how to pay for it. By the time I got home, another idea hit me, and a slow grin spread across my face. The cruise. See, I'd booked a surprise Caribbean cruise for my parents, a week of luxury, private suites, full excursions. $20,000 of memories they'd never forget. Well, turns out, they'll never forget it for a different reason. A few clicks, a quick chat with customer service, and that entire booking disappeared. Cancelled. Just like that. By the time I poured myself a whiskey and sank into my armchair, I felt lighter than I had in years. Then my phone started buzzing. My sister. My aunt. Jake. One call after another, piling up until the screen looked like a slot machine gone wild. By morning, the total was 83 missed calls. And deep down, I knew one thing for sure, this was just the beginning. By the next morning, I thought maybe I'd wake up second-guessing myself. Maybe I'd feel guilt. Regret. Something. Instead, I opened my eyes, stretched, and felt lighter. Like I dropped a stone I'd been carrying for decades. My phone, though? My phone looked like a war zone. Missed calls stacked on top of each other. Angry texts lighting up the screen like fireworks. 83 by sunrise. And counting. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I brewed myself a fresh pot of coffee, sat at my desk, and took that first sip like it was the sweetest taste of freedom I'd ever known. The calm in my chest was almost unnerving. Like I was waiting for the storm, but realizing, for once, I wasn't the one drowning in it. The first to break was my sister, Amy. Around noon, I heard a frantic knock. When I opened the door, there she was, face flushed, eyes darting like a guilty teenager caught shoplifting. And of course, she didn't come alone. Her 3 kids tumbled past me before I could say a word, knocking into the side table, sending one of the only family photos I hadn't packed away wobbling dangerously. That photo, my boys. Taken before my marriage blew up. Before everything fractured. My throat tightened for half a second, but I forced myself to focus back on Amy. She didn't waste any time. "Matthew, what the hell happened last night?" Her voice cracked, sharp and tight. The restaurant said the reservation was cancelled, the card bounced, Mom was so embarrassed they had to pay cash just to cover the wine. I leaned back against the wall, coffee still in hand, watching her kids start a tug-of-war with my throw pillows. I let the silence drag on, let her twist in it. Her cheeks flushed darker with every second I refused to speak. Finally, I set the mug down and said flatly, Must have been a misunderstanding. Maybe the real family should have handled it." Her mouth fell open. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of shame. Maybe she'd apologize. Maybe she'd admit it had gone too far. But no. She straightened, mask snapping back into place. "That's not funny, Matthew. Mom and Dad were humiliated. Do you even understand how expensive that place is?" I leaned in, holding her gaze, my voice low and steady. "Yeah, I do. I'm the one who booked it." The words hit her like a slap. She blinked, mouth opening, then shutting again. Her phone buzzed in her hand, and I tilted my head toward it. "While you're on there, you might want to check your email?" Confusion flickered across her face. Her fingers flew, scrolling, tapping. And then, her whole expression drained. Pale. Hollow. The color just vanished. She'd found it. The cruise. The week-long luxury Caribbean trip I'd quietly booked as a surprise. Their bragging rights. Their golden ticket. Gone. Cancelled. Erased. "Matthew," her voice broke, suddenly small. Almost childlike. "Why? Why would you do this?" I stepped closer, years of swallowed resentment sharpening every syllable. "Because I'm done. Done being your safety net. Done being the family ATM, done pretending this is a family worth bleeding for." The room fell silent. Even her kids had stopped wrestling, standing still now, staring at me with wide eyes. I didn't flinch. I didn't soften. I just held the door open. Amy's jaw trembled as she herded her kids past me, her footsteps heavy, her face unreadable. She glanced back once, like she didn't even recognize me anymore. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and for a moment, the quiet was deafening. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message lit the screen. From Aunt Karen. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. I let out a short, humorless laugh, tossed the phone onto the couch, and walked back into my office. If they thought this was the end, oh, they had no idea what storm I was about to unleash. It only took a few days for the reality of what I'd done to fully hit my family. The constant storm of calls and angry texts finally slowed, but that silence? That was worse. It wasn't peace, it was the kind of quiet you get when the sky goes dark before a tornado touches down. The first crack came from none other than my cousin Jake, the same smug idiot who'd called me a freeloader over lobster at a dinner I'd paid for. I was in my office finishing up a client presentation when his name lit up my phone. I let it ring until it stopped. A moment later, another buzz, voicemail. I hit speaker and leaned back in my chair as his voice came through, dripping with fake charm. Yo, Matt, look. I think there's been a misunderstanding, alright? That whole thing at dinner, it was just a joke, man. You know how Karen is, always running her mouth. Don't take it so personally. I couldn't help it, I smiled. Not the warm kind. The slow, bitter kind you get when the pieces finally click. When the handout stopped, suddenly it was all just a joke. Jake kept talking, his tone shifting fast from fake cheer to barely contained panic. Look, man, the cruise thing, you've got to fix that. You know how much Mom and Dad were looking forward to it. They're freaking out. Just, call me back, alright? I deleted the message without hesitation. For years, they treated my patience like it was endless. My wallet like it was bottomless. They truly didn't understand what it meant to face consequences. 2 days later, wave 2 hit. This time, it was Aunt Karen herself. The one who'd thrown the first dagger. I spotted her through the glass wall of my office, striding in behind my assistant with that brittle, painted-on smile that never reached her eyes. She dropped into the chair across from me, her oversized handbag thudding against my desk like a challenge. Matthew, she began, her voice laced with strained sweetness. I think we need to clear the air. I didn't say a word. Just arched an eyebrow. She waved a hand casually, as if brushing off the rubble of my life. I know you've been under a lot of stress with the divorce and all. But punishing the entire family over a silly misunderstanding isn't fair. My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent, letting her dig deeper. Your parents are devastated. You embarrassed them in front of everyone, and now this cruise mess? Matthew, they're too old to handle this kind of shock. She leaned in, voice dropping to a hushed whisper. You know how fragile your mother's heart is. You don't want that on your conscience, do you? There it was. The guilt trip. The same trick they'd used on me since I was 16 and driving them to the airport for yet another last-minute, all-expenses-paid getaway. I locked eyes with her, voice steady, sharp. Karen, you called me a freeloader. At a dinner I paid for. You treated me like an outsider at my own event. And now you want me to apologize? She blinked, caught off guard, but quickly recovered. The fake smile wavered, then snapped back in place. Oh, come on. You know I didn't mean it like that. We're family. Family fights and then makes up. I leaned forward, voice low and icy. Family doesn't bleed you dry, then laugh in your face when you finally stand up for yourself. Her fingers clenched around her handbag strap so hard the fake leather creaked. For a second, I thought the mask would finally crack and I'd see the real Karen underneath. But no, she plastered on that brittle smile again. Fine, she snapped, standing so fast her chair squeaked. Be that way. But don't come crawling back when you realize how alone you are. Her heels clicked like gunshots as she stormed out. My assistant peeked in, eyebrows raised, but I just waved it off and turned back to my laptop. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. A new message. This time, from Dad. Son, we need to talk. This has gone too far. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. They still didn't get it. They thought this was just another round of family drama. Something a few weak apologies and fake hugs could smooth over. They had no idea what storm was about to hit them. A week slid by, and the silence from my family was suffocating. It wasn't peace, it was the eerie stillness before thunder splits the sky. I knew them too well. They weren't giving up. They were circling, regrouping, plotting their next move. The first ripple came from my mother. Her name flashed on my phone late one evening, and I let it go straight to voicemail, bracing for the usual shrill guilt trip. But when I listened, her voice stopped me cold. Matthew, honey, please call me. We miss you. I'm worried about you. It wasn't sharp or manipulative. It was soft. Fragile. I replayed it twice, frowning, listening for the hook. There was fear in her tone, a fear I hadn't heard in years. For a heartbeat, I almost let myself believe it was real. But then the old instinct kicked in. I deleted it. I'd had enough traps disguised as tenderness to last a lifetime. 2 days later, the real ambush arrived. When I turned onto my street, there it was. My dad's old Chevy. Rust spotted, paint flaking, the same beast he used to haul us to fishing trips when I was a kid. It hadn't been in my neighborhood for years, and now it sat at the curb like a warning. And there he was. My father. Sitting on my front steps, hunched in his grease-stained jacket, a permanent frown etched into his weathered face. I killed the engine, keys jingling in my hand as I got out. His eyes met mine, steady, rough. Matthew, he said, voice gravelly. We need to talk. Classic him. No warning. No respect. Just show up, back me into a corner, force the conversation on his terms. I walked past him, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. He hesitated, then followed, shutting the door behind him. His gaze swept my home, the polished hardwood, the leather furniture, the clean, modern lines. A far cry from the cluttered old house I grew up in. Nice place, he muttered, dropping into an armchair without so much as a nod. I crossed my arms, leaning against the kitchen island. What do you want, Dad? For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd apologize. His rough hands rubbed over his jaw, his shoulders slumping. But instead, he sighed and said, your mother's a wreck. She barely sleeps, worried sick about you. Feels like you've abandoned the family. My jaw tightened, my fingers gripping the cold granite. I didn't abandon anyone. I just stopped letting you all use me as a punching bag. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Punching bag? You've got a good job, a nice house. We never asked you for anything you couldn't afford. A bitter laugh broke out of me before I could stop it. You've treated me like a walking ATM for years. Every loan you never repaid, every guilt trip, every smug little dig at family dinners, I noticed. I noticed it all. He shot up from the chair, his voice rising. We're family, Matthew. Family helps each other. You've got all this, he waved at the room, his face reddening, and you're going to deny us a little help when we need it. I pushed off the counter, stepping closer. My voice came out steady, hard. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your retirement plan. And I am done cleaning up after every bad decision this family makes. For a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Anger, yes, but also fear. The same fear he had the night I was a teenager and finally talked back, the night he almost raised a hand to me. I braced for it again. But it never came. His shoulders sagged, his breath rattling out in a long, defeated exhale. Fine, he muttered, voice small. Fine. If that's how you want it. He shuffled toward the door. His hand lingered on the knob, his back still to me. Money isn't everything, Matthew. One day you'll wake up and realize you've pushed everyone away. And then he was gone. The door clicked shut, his heavy footsteps fading down the steps. Through the window, I watched him slide into that battered Chevy. The engine coughed to life, trailing a thin cloud of smoke as he drove off. The house was too quiet when I turned back. Too still. For a moment, I wanted to feel triumphant, free of the chains that had bound me for years. But instead, there was a hollow ache in my chest. The kind that comes when you finally cut the last thread tying you to a past you should have walked away from long ago. And still, I knew there was no going back. A few more days crawled by, and the silence from my family began to feel like pressure in the air, thick, heavy, electric. The kind of silence that makes you brace for thunder you know is coming. I kept waiting for the next move, a sudden knock on my door, another guilt-ridden voicemail, but nothing came. Instead, the blow landed in a way I didn't expect. I was at the gym, halfway through a brutal set of deadlifts, sweat dripping into my eyes, my lungs burning. My phone buzzed on the bench. I ignored it. But it buzzed again. And again. By the fourth vibration, I dropped the bar with a heavy clang, wiped my face with a towel, and grabbed the phone. It was from Aunt Karen. You know, it's pathetic how you're acting. Turning your back on family. Shameful. Everyone knows you're just bitter because your wife left you. The words cut sharper than any weight I'd ever lifted. That was Karen. She always knew where the wounds were, and she had no problem driving the knife deeper. My hands trembled, fury tightening in my chest. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, jaw clenched. But it didn't stop. By the time I reached my car, there were 3 more messages waiting for me. Jake, heard you're still sulking. You've always been weak. That's why she left you. Amy, Mom's been crying for days. I hope you're proud of yourself. Karen, again, you might have money, but you'll always be alone. I gripped the steering wheel until the leather creaked, my knuckles white. They were doing what they always did, circling like vultures, trying to tear me down, drag me back into the pit with them. But they didn't realize something. The old me, the one who would have folded under that pressure, was gone. That man had snapped the moment they told me I wasn't real family at a dinner I paid for. I drove home, poured myself a whiskey, and settled onto the back porch. The evening air was cool against my skin, cicadas buzzing faintly in the distance. I scrolled through the muted family group chat, the one I'd avoided for months. And there it was, their narrative. I'd been cast as the villain. The selfish son who abandoned his parents. The bitter divorce lashing out because he couldn't handle his own failures. I took a long sip of whiskey, letting the burn spread through me. And then, I smiled. Because I still had one final move to make. I opened my laptop and pulled up my trust documents, the ones I'd set up years ago when my business first took off. Back then, I'd felt proud knowing I'd left behind a cushion for my family. A college fund for Amy's kids. A share for my parents. Enough to set everyone up comfortably, even long after I was gone. It had seemed like the right thing to do. But as I stared at the list of beneficiaries, I realized what a fool I'd been. Every name on that list belonged to someone who saw me as a wallet, not a son, not a brother, not a cousin. With a few deliberate keystrokes, I erased them. Every last one. Now, everything I'd built, my estate, my assets, my legacy, would go to charity. To people who might actually appreciate it. To strangers who wouldn't stab me in the back the second the money hit the table. My heart pounded as I saved the changes, a strange cocktail of freedom and finality washing over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to their cruelty, I was ending the cycle. I drained the rest of my drink, watching the sky blaze orange and red as the sun sank low. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my father. Enough. Come to the house. Let's fix this. I set the phone down beside me, screen glowing against the wood before dimming into darkness. They still thought this was a game, blow-ups followed by apologies, ugly words patched over with half-hearted hugs. They thought I'd cave, like always. Head down. Pockets open. Heart forgiving. But they were wrong. Dead wrong. It was a Sunday morning, the kind that feels deceptively peaceful. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, painting golden stripes across my kitchen, the world outside so calm it almost mocked the storm inside me. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there they were, my parents. My mom stood clutching her purse with both hands, her eyes red and swollen like she hadn't slept in days. My dad was beside her, stiff as a board, his jaw set, the lines on his face carved deeper than I remembered. "Matthew," my mom whispered, her voice trembling, "can we come in? We need to talk." For a second, I just stared at them, my hand tightening on the doorframe. Then I stepped aside. They shuffled in, their presence filling the quiet order of the house I had built without them. The polished floors, the carefully chosen furniture, everything neat and deliberate, none of it felt like theirs. They sat down on my couch like strangers, my mom dabbing her eyes, my dad staring at his hands. I stayed standing, leaning against the kitchen island, arms crossed. Waiting. My mom looked up first, her eyes glassy. "Matthew, honey, we're worried about you. We miss you. The family isn't the same without you." I said nothing. Just watched as she twisted that tissue in her hands, her fingers trembling. "We know we've said some things," she continued, her voice cracking. We didn't mean them. You know how your aunt gets, how Jake can be. It was just a joke, that's all." My jaw clenched. A joke. Always a joke. Always a misunderstanding. Years of cuts and digs and whispers reduced to a punchline. My dad cleared his throat, his deep voice filling the silence. "Son, this has gone on long enough. We're family. We shouldn't let a few harsh words tear us apart." I drew a slow breath, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "Harsh words? That's what you think this is about? A few harsh words?" My dad flinched, his eyes hardening. "You're acting like a child, Matthew. You think cutting us off makes you strong? It just makes you alone." My pulse roared in my ears. I stepped forward, each word like a hammer. "I'm alone because you shoved me there. You treated me like a wallet with legs. A backup plan. A joke. You think I didn't notice the whispers at every dinner? The rolled eyes when I talked about my life? You made me the outsider. And now you want me to crawl back." My mom broke again, sobbing into her tissue, her hands shaking. My dad's face twisted, his jaw working furiously, searching for an argument. "Matthew," he said finally, voice low, strained, "we're your family. You owe us at least that much." A cold laugh slipped out of me, hollow and sharp. "I owe you." My voice cracked like ice. "I've given you more than you ever deserved. I paid your bills. Covered your debts. Kept this family afloat while you took and took and took. And the one time I stand up for myself, you try to drag me back down." My dad shot to his feet, his fists clenching, his face red. For a moment, I thought, just like when I was a teenager, that he might actually swing. But then, he deflated. His shoulders sagged. His eyes darted away. "Fine," he spat, his voice tight and shaking. "So be it. We'll manage without you, you fool." He yanked my mom up by the arm, her sobs breaking in the air as he dragged her toward the door. I followed them to the threshold, my chest heaving. My mom stumbled on the porch steps, turning back one last time. Her tear-streaked face was twisted with grief, disbelief, desperation. Her lips trembled like she wanted to speak, but my dad pulled her away before she could. Their footsteps faded down the driveway, swallowed by the sound of the morning breeze. I stood in the doorway, forehead pressed against the cool wood as the door clicked shut behind them. I waited for the regret, for the guilt, for that ache that had always pulled me back before. But it never came. Instead, a calm settled over me. Heavy, powerful, undeniable. A certainty that I had finally broken the cycle. I straightened, breathed deep, and let the door close with finality. This time, it was over.